Hello, I'm so happy to be here. I'm Deborah Ruf, and I'm talking to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I live and work. In fact, I'm in my home office right now. I am a high intelligence specialist and educational consultant who got my credentials as a result of my parenthood. And I'm talking to a lot of you who are also parents, I'm sure. But you're also gifted adults. And I want to talk about how I've learned over time the connection from birth throughout your life to your intellectual level. I have specialized in what I call levels of giftedness because IQ scores aren't enough to tell us what giftedness is. There's more to it than the score you get on a test. Over the years, I've done research on many, many children and families, asking them for the milestones, the early childhood behaviors of their children. And I put it into a book in 2005. And it used to be called Losing Our Minds, Gifted Children Left Behind, but no one knew what that meant. So we changed the title a few years ago to Five Levels of Gifted, School Issues and Educational Options. And in that book, I give you stories about 78 children from 50 different families and what those children were like from the day they were born, in the words of their parents. And then I group them into five categories or levels of intelligence that helped show you through anecdotal information as well as test scores how these kids behave, the kinds of interests they have, what it meant for their parents and their teachers. And it has been very, very useful for people to see that they're not alone. Because giftedness is, depending on how you want to describe it, it really is about 10% of the population is very, very capable of doing anything they set out to do if they have the right support. And the more rare your intellectual level or profile, the more often you feel alone. So I am trying to help people who are unusual not feel alone and feel understood and have a way to connect to who they really are with others who share a lot of the same qualities. In the last 2 years, I have worked with a colleague, a local colleague, to build a new website that we just introduced a new free product this last week called the Milestone Tracker. And the Milestone Tracker can be found on talentigniter.com. And it's a tool that parents can use to put down everything they can remember about their child from the time he or she was born. And in this, we are also providing information about how to help your child, support your child, give your child the best possible educational opportunities, but also social opportunities to create a more emotionally healthy individual. I have been talking to Roya. She knows I'm a pet lover, and I don't know if you can tell right now, but my dog just came up to me, and I'm petting him. But she has a cat, and I love cats too. So, in fact, my home office, I have my dog here, and that makes it very comfortable and homey when the families come to meet with me. But I would like you to know that there are many people in the world who care very much about making it more comfortable for people who are different in that they are extra curious, sensitive, intense, and it can be confusing because when you're around other people who don't get you, you often will think there's something wrong with you. And our schools are set up by age rather than readiness to learn. And an interesting little quote I like to share with the families is, gifted children learn more over the summer than they do during the school year. Another quote I like to share is, it makes about as much pedagogical sense to group children by age as it does by height. And an additional one is, by first grade, when children are about 6 years old, there are already the equivalent of 12 grade equivalencies of achievement in the classroom when kids are simply grouped by age. So this sets us up for not fitting in, and it makes it very difficult to know who we are and what we can accomplish. So Roya is here too, and I know she can ask me some specific questions so that I don't just ramble.
I just want to ask you one question. When
Mhm.
a teacher has a lot of students in her classroom or in their classroom, so how can they identify so one or two students are very gifted or special gifted?
Well, for one thing, grades don't necessarily indicate who's gifted
Mm-hmm.
because grades are about reading the teacher and what she or he wants from you and being willing to do what the teacher wants. So there may be some very smart, highly gifted children in a classroom who don't get good grades. And this can be very confusing to the parents and the teacher, as well as the child. But different personality types, I use the Myers-Briggs and the children's version, the Murphy-Meisgeier, to determine the type preferences of the children, because that will have a lot to do with their behavior in school, how much they cooperate or not. Also, more girls will cooperate and get good grades than boys on average. So a lot of boys are under recognized as being gifted because of their early behavior in elementary school. But what you will see is children who always ask those why questions, want to know more. In the early grades, they want to talk to the teacher all the time because the teacher gets their sense of humor, is more interesting for them to talk to because he or she knows more than the age mates in the classroom. But before children are good at handwriting, and mostly handwriting and sitting still, before they are good at handwriting and sitting still, it's very hard to meet the needs of the gifted child in the regular classroom. They can be lonely because there's no one else that they can talk to about their interests. They can be boring to the other kids in the class. So they start to act like class clown. These are all signs that the child may be undereducated in the room. Now, class size comes up a lot. And I taught elementary school, fourth through sixth grade. I was also qualified to be licensed to be a principal, and that was my plan until I had children and realized I needed to get into this part of education. But I found if your class is too small, it is very difficult to group the children for their different subjects by what they're ready to do. If the class is larger, each child is more likely to have someone else in the class with whom they can really get along, compete, study with, and be educated with. So I personally like a class size that is over 20 children. Uh, Over 30 would be hard. Somewhere between 20 and 30, though, is much better than 15, unless the class of 15 has been grouped so they're intellectually ready on the same page more. But in a very intellectually diverse classroom, it helps to have more children. Ask me something else.
Okay, what could parent do for these very, very gifted kids, which they are most of the time very sensitive or crying maybe a lot?
Yes, it's amazing how many of the gifted children in the early grades end up in tears. Uh, One of the things I found as a teacher and as a parent and as a education consultant is it helps if you go to the teacher with solutions, not threats or even requests. If you go to the teacher and say, "You've got to do more for my child," that can be very overwhelming to the child, to the teacher. Instead, learn what you can on websites like mine, and there are lots of others out there. Go through hoagiesgifted.com to get all the sites. But my site is educationaloptions.com, and I have lots of links and articles and book recommendations free. Well, you have to pay for the books from wherever you buy books, but you can learn what your child would need. In my book, 5 Levels of Gifted, you'll discover your child. Oh, also, I have an online inventory now that you, the parent, completes the early milestones for your child, and it gives you an estimate of your child's ability level. I have it arranged in 13 different levels from average to profoundly gifted, and it's priced to sell on the Talent Igniter site. And my feeling is if more people availed themselves of the information before their children start school, they would know what to request of the schools and what to expect of the schools. And the schools would have to start changing. They would not be able to say, oh, we can't tell who the gifted are until 3rd grade or later. Because you can tell before they start school. You really can. And once you do that, you're able to confidently say, it would be all right if you excuse my child from learning the letters and let her sit in the corner and read for that half hour. And let my child have access to the books that he's really interested in, not just the books that are normally provided in the class. You also have to give this child handwriting practice so that they can accelerate sooner. I'm very much in favor of subject acceleration in the talent areas. And again, if the parent can come up with activities and materials, it'll make it easier for the teacher to provide the time and space. And then you aren't acting like a threat to them. It can be very offensive to a teacher to imply that their class is boring. You have to consider the teacher's feelings and training. They are doing the best they can in a system that groups children by age instead of readiness. And that's very hard on the teacher. What else?
Okay, my next question is how can we deal with those gifted kids who lost motivation or interest on school?
Well, I know some countries are more flexible than others.
Hmm.
Some do not allow parents to remove their children from a classroom at all. But others, in my state, in Minnesota, we actually have a school choice. You can go to a different school no matter where you live.
Hmm.
You can also partial homeschool, which means you can use the school for what works, and then you can provide tutors or homeschooling for the other parts of the day. Use online learning, independent study. If you have to stay in the school, which a lot of countries require,
Hmm.
you can ask for the set aside time for the child to perhaps go to another part of the school to be with older children or adults. Very young, gifted children will be more motivated if they can discuss their interests with somebody mature, like, say, the librarian or the assistant in the office or the nurse. If that child has a chance to have more discussions about what he or she loves, is reading, this is a very huge motivator for preparing, being ready for the talk, having read the book or the chapter so that they can have their discussion. The motivation comes back. You can't motivate a person. They have to motivate themselves. But the environment has to be right for them to be doing what they're ready to do. That motivation question is a very big one. It's sometimes parents and teachers think a child who won't cooperate in the classroom is unmotivated. Well, they are, but they won't ever be motivated to do what you want them to do if it really is the wrong thing for them. And children have this intrinsic awareness of what fits them. And they aren't wise enough. It doesn't matter how smart they are. If they're little kids, they're still not mature. They simply know they don't like it. And we have to give them the opportunity to be around discussions and materials and activities that they truly are ready for. There are children remember the quote I gave you about 12 grade equivalencies in a typical first grade classroom? The teacher's teaching to a range of maybe 3 of them. So those kids need an opportunity to be doing what they are ready to do, and when possible, with others who are also ready, so they don't get lonely. Extroverted children do not like working alone. They aren't going to take advantage of the independent study you set up for them if they have to do it all by themselves. I also encourage, when you do come up with a plan for a young gifted child, have somebody supervising it. Don't expect a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old to be totally good at being independent. They won't be. Intelligence doesn't play into that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I agree with you. And my last question is there anything else you would like to tell parents? How can they do the best? Because everyone want to do the best for a
right,
child.
right.
But what do you say to those parents who want to do the best for their gifted child?
Educate yourself on the nature of the beast. You have to educate yourself on what intelligence really is. There are a lot of myths out there that confuse parents, and they aren't sure which direction to turn. There are listservs you can get on chat discussion boards. You can read blogs. There are books. My book, I think, really opens your eyes to what you're dealing with. And then from there, you go to the specifics related to your child with other books and other resources. If you just assume the school is going to meet your child's needs, by the time your child's been there 6 to 24 months, you will see you've wasted some time. You do need to educate yourself, and waiting to see how it goes isn't necessary. Your child is going to get some bad habits and perhaps some bad feelings about him or herself. And children who cooperate in school, even when it is the wrong fit for them, become part of the process of them learning to underachieve. And once they learn to underachieve, they don't develop study skills. They can become perfectionistic. They will not try things that truly challenge them because they've gotten too lazy, too complacent with things that simply are too easy. So educate yourselves, and you will be able to navigate the system for your child.